Welcome to Strange Coordinates, the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at surprising places. I am Topher Burns.
And I am Robert Baylog. So along with our partner, Idon, Topher and I lead an advertising agency called Territorial. We've started this after lifetimes of working with some of the best loved brands in the world. And what we do is we help brands find their place. And we do that by exploring how culture and history and desire and commerce all kind of bounce off one another and come together to reveal insights about what's cool about being a human.
Every episode, one of us gives the other a brand to explore. That person has to trek into the wilderness and come back with the story that they find to be most compelling. It's using brands as compass points to discover more about the world around us.
And today we are going to discover some stuff, Topher. When we started Strange Coordinates, and I say we, but it might have just been me, dressed for the episodes. Do you remember those early days? I believe there was a Nordic Track episode in which I maybe foolishly wore a sleeveless shirt and a bandana.
I loved it.
Well, I'm trying to bring that back a little bit. I'm wearing some green today. It's not St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
I would have put cash on me somewhere, but who has cash in this economy? But yeah, so today we're talking money.
And, your color coding we're actually going to get into exactly that.
Ooh.
Right off the bat.
Love it.
So you gave me the perfect segue and we can jump right into it. I have a question for you before we kind of dive in. And we're talking money. Do you want to remind us about the brand we're going to be diving into?
Well, the brand we're diving into today is Chime, the modern financial brand that I actually don't know a ton about. So I'm very excited to kind of dive into this. Follow your nose wherever it goes. And
yeah.
Okay, so where's it going? Where's it taking us?
You had more on the nose, and I was like,
I was going to go weird. Where's that nose going?
What are you going to say about my nose?
Where the hell's that nose? Where's that nose been?
I was waiting. I was like, yeah, I'll give him a little bit more rope on this one. How much more runway you need on the nose?
Way out over my skis on that one.
We're good. We're good.
All right.
Well, I have a question for you.
Tell me.
How do you sort the apps on your phone? Do you have little folders that you put them into?
I'm kind of halfway. I'm neither here nor there. There's some that are in folders. There's some that are not.
Okay.
And I think it's the ones that I can easily categorize, I put in folders. And then the rest, I'm like, I don't know what this is. And I don't have enough to make a folder out of it. So they're kind of just hanging out there willy-nilly.
Yeah. With the ones that are in folders, do you have a folder for banking, financials, that sort of thing? If you open it, what color is the most popular color of the apps?
Blue.
Okay.
Yeah, fully blue. I can even say that without even opening it, but now I'm verifying. Yes, blue.
All right. So, that is something that is my experience as well. I have one and I open it up and I got USAA, I got Venmo, I got Coinbase. There's a ton of stuff in there and they're all stacking blue as well. Yeah. So it's a very monochrome folder. We're going to get back to that color because that becomes an interesting and important part of kind of what I want to talk about, where Chime led me.
Okay.
But I have one more question that I want to ask you before we dive into this. So I'm going to give you the name of a finance app.
Okay.
And I just want you as a person, as a human being, you're not being required to act in any professional capacity at this time.
This is another one of Topher's traps. Here it comes.
No,
Look
this
how
is
bad Robert is at his
trying
job.
To help you feel not anxious about just doing something.
I'm not anxious about it. you know my test taking anxiety, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to give you the name of a finance app, and I want you to tell me, just as a human being, the words that you associate with this name. What, it sounds friendly, or it sounds this. I imagine it's that, whatever it would be. So the name of this finance app is all one word, one debit. And one is a number, and then debit is all lowercase. One debit. What do you think about that, if you think that's a financial app?
I mean, not much personality. It sort of is. It is fronting technology. I'm presuming that one debit is describing some kind of we kind of bundle, or we put it all together, or it's just sort of like an ease or a functional promise.
Okay, cool. And then if I'm going to give you the word Chime, and that's called an app. How do you think that's a financial app,
Sure.
the name of a financial app, obviously, but like how now comparing to One Debit, what sort of like emotional connotation do you take from it or personality?
Yeah, I mean, I get like reward. And it's interesting because a chime is a very specific description for an audio notification. And it's very positive. Like, what is it? What do you associate with it? Like chiming of the bells. You know, it's sort of like
Yep,
there's something kind of uplifting about it. So
totally.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, so what we're talking about in these things is a little bit of kind of like how does the brand Chime show up in the world? And I want to kind of talk about how that's like intentional and where that has led them on their journey. Because I think it's a really interesting example of just kind of how branding helps a company show up in different ways and accomplish different goals.
All right.
So you kind of talked about the name of Chime.
Yeah.
And you talked about a few different things that I think are really cool. And those are things that the founder of the company noted as well. I dug up a little bit of their founder talking about kind of the naming story. It was interesting because as you and I know, naming is such a, and we talked about this in a previous show too, with Eli Altman, but naming is tricky. It's super personal. It's the type of thing that everybody feels like they should be capable of doing, and so they don't like to bring in outside help to do it because anybody can think of the name. I named my dog, you know, like that sort of thing. So it was funny because the co-founder, he was talking about the naming exercise, and they had founded themselves as One Debit. One Debit, all one word, in 2012. And just kind of like, you know, I get it. It's an app for debit, but it doesn't sound that exciting or aspirational.
Yeah.
So when they were going to kind of like really go to scale up and get new investor, attention and kind of grow, they did a rebrand, and they included kind of like a name as part of that. And they apparently wrote a bunch of, the two co-founders sat down, wrote a bunch of different things together. Nothing really stuck. So they brought in a naming agency, and the naming agency sold them through this process on the word Chime.
Yeah.
The reasons that they liked it are a lot of what you mentioned, and we'll go into that in just a second. But it was funny because the addendum to this story was the founder saying like, and then we went back and we looked at all the ideas that we came up with, and it turns out that we had written down Chime. So like in sort of way, we came up with it. But I like that process because on one hand, it's kind of like, it's like, all right, like, you know, whatever, sure, maybe you did and maybe you didn't. But I also think it's funny that like, to me, that underscores that like a naming process, sometimes you just can't do it yourself because you can't really see the forest for the trees. Yeah. And, you know, if you're just sitting there in a conference room with your technical co-founder and you guys are like, Chime? No, that's lame.
Right.
And so it helps to have somebody else to help you see the power of something from a different view.
Totally. And I'm sure like millions of people were in the presence of penicillin before it was discovered and applied to a medical purpose. So like, you don't get credit just for knowing what a word is.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Yeah. So you picked up on a lot of what they liked about the Chime name, which is, you know, they really, that there's a sound, there's a notification. And I think that's super savvy that they're kind of like grounding you even within their name in the fact that it is digital without saying One Debit, which is one way to say digital, but instead they're talking about a thing you actually like about your phone, which is notifications.
Yeah.
They were kind of talking about it as like, it's the sound that like payday, happens when it pops up on your phone. Like you get a notification that you just got money in there. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. It definitely.
While we're talking to, is a chime from a musical perspective, a like multi-tonal, is that what makes a chime? Like, it's not just a ding. Could you think of a ding as a chime? Because like you're right, the notion of payday, that sound is like multiple things happening, multiple notes,
Okay.
and like
Yeah.
I never really, and like if you think about the chiming of the bells, there's multiple tones. Curious.
Yeah. I don't know technically, but I do think for sure, like that's how I imagine. Like, is a wind chime is a, like
Yeah.
a chiming is like the NBC tones
Right.
that are multi-tone.
Yeah.
Like I see what you're going with
Yeah.
that. Got like a progression to it.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of a larger intention from Chime to show up in ways that early on reminded you that they are tech focused, that they are about money, but they're very different from all those other things that do money. And so that takes us back to the blue thing,
Right.
Because Chime chose to show up in a different color. But all of that kind of comes from a little bit of like, we can kind of ground in like what makes Chime different and how did they start?
Yeah.
And so are you familiar with the like how Chime got started?
No, I don't know any of it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Basics of Chime, for those of you who don't know, is that Chime differentiates themselves from the rest of the financial services sort of banking world by saying that like banks historically have made their money on fees and charges.
Right.
Chime makes money on you transacting with Chime. And so that means that you are not punished for behaviors like overdraft or like monthly fees. Right. And it makes banking just like more accessible to your average person. They have some really staggering stats in terms of just the billions and billions of dollars that the financial service industry makes each year just on fees and overdraft, overdraft, monthly fees, those types of things. So importantly, in the function of kind of like how Chime works, they serve as what we would call, as people who use money, a bank. But they're not a bank.
Okay.
So they get described as a neobank. They get described and lumped in with other things that are called neobanks and that sort of thing. But they almost kind of serve as like a tech and marketing and service layer on top of other banks.
Okay.
So when you give Chime your money, it doesn't go to Chime and they hold it and they're the ones who have to have like the insurance. What's the insurance called? Where it's like, we'll give you the... Yeah, they get the. They don't have to do that type of thing. Instead, they have banks that they work with where they take your money and then they go give it to these people.
Right.
They just make it easier for you to transact, and they operate on a variety of different levels. So that becomes important later on when you start to talk about kind of like how things evolve. But for right now, it's just kind of like you're giving your money to Chime. They let you manage it in some ways that are different, and the service layer is a little bit different as well.
The complexity, the background complexity here is pretty intense. I can imagine. Like,
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Like, because there are multiple. It's not just one bank. It's not like they're sitting over a layer of one single bank. They have a ton of different banks.
And even if you're just if you think about if you just bank with, like, for instance, I bank with Chase. I know that at any given time, the money that I supposedly have in the bank at Chase is not actually in my account per se. They're using that money to float other investments, and like, it's fluid. It's always moving. And like, can you imagine? Yeah. So that's just at a bank that I have a direct relationship with. And then imagine this other layer on top of that they need to be sure that the banks that they're working with who are obviously using that money themselves are going to at any time be able to kind of honor that. That's just, to me, that's just so wild. When I think about the financial system, it's like thinking about the fact that the universe is expanding. It just fries my brain a little bit. Like, the complexities of these things don't really make any sense to me because we're dealing at mathematical levels that are just so staggering.
I mean, I think you're selling yourself short. Like, of course, maybe there is like an infinite number of amount of complexity in the thing, but like, I do feel like it's a thing your brain kind of understands more naturally than mine. Like, to some degree, I'm like, sounds like they got it taken care of. I'm cool. you know,
Good job with that, guys.
I think you lead a financial life that is more examined than my own.
Well, I have worked on financial brands for most of my career, so I kind of just seeped in, I think.
Yeah. I have also done a turn with financial brands, but I tend to, maybe the value I provide is like the person from the outside that's like, yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That makes sense.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah. Okay.
a little bit more of a sniff test. But okay, so notable products and services that kind of help you understand what Chime does and the value that they bring to their customers. First one that really differentiated them was called Spot Me, and it's a fee-free overdraft coverage.
Uh-huh.
So it means that if you go into overdraft and it's something like up to $200 or something like that, they're not hitting you with a $400 or a $45 fee every time you do that, which is really important because the average American does go into overdraft multiple times a year.
Yeah.
And so, that means that if you go into overdraft at the point that an average American would, maybe you're paying $100, even $200 per year, just in these like fees that hit you right when you're down, which is people hate. And I totally get it. And that's very destabilizing if you are in a situation of, financial insecurity anyways.
Yeah. Also well named too, Spot Me. Like it's great. A perfectly named product.
Yep. Yeah. They have another really great product name called MyPay. And that is also one word. So Spot Me is one word. MyPay is one word. MyPay is one of their most recent products. And that means that you can access up to $500 of your paycheck before you get paid. So that means things like, if you're going to get paid on a Friday, on Tuesday, you can access like $500 of that. Mm-hmm. So another great name for that. It's a very popular product. They do things like early direct deposit. So they clear that much faster. So, sometimes people have the delays where the direct deposit is supposed to come in on a Tuesday, which means that you don't really get the money available until Friday or something like that. So they give you the money much earlier, up to 2 days earlier, I believe. A credit builder card. So you can kind of see from these products, like, what would you surmise, like in terms of their like target market, who they're looking to help?
Obviously high net worth individuals. I mean, that's clear.
The richest of the rich.
Yeah. No, I think like, people who are working, jobs where they get paid every 2 weeks, and they are probably hourly employees. They may have multiple jobs. They may not be full-time anywhere. Like, there's a little bit of unpredictability in their financial situation. So, yeah.
It's interesting because the label for this type of person has really changed over the past 10 years. I think 10 years ago, people would have been very comfortable saying like low-income earners or something like that. Mm-hmm. But first off, that's probably not a very accurate way for those to have been described in the past anyways. Right. It's a very classist way to describe them. But it's also more what you're describing in terms of gig work, multiple jobs, those types of things. Like more and more Americans are being a part of that. We're talking about a massive chunk of our economy is all in this space that the banking industry was basically not made to serve.
Right.
And so that's the basic component and offering of Chime, is to say like, we're here to serve the underserved, is kind of how they talk about it.
Well, the current banking
perspective,
the current banking industry, but like the banking industry that we've known in this country in the last century and the century prior, of like small town banks where everybody, where you knew the people, and like people would have a very small account that they could access and they could get credit directly from the bank. Like that was the banking system. That is not the banking system anymore, but that was the banking system. Yeah. So it is kind of like a digital version of that in some ways, extending their credit to you.
Yeah. And local credit unions continue to be
totally
a good alternative towards some of these things. Although, what Chime offers is a lot of like the digital convenience and like access that is harder for local credit unions to do. And we at Territorial believe strongly in supporting local credit unions. Shout out to Beneficial State Bank. Agreed completely that there is. It's not fair to say that like the the Wells Fargo of today is the same thing as, the
Right.
local credit union of 100 years ago.
Yeah, totally.
And so, you're talking about this audience
Yeah.
that underserved, that Chime is serving. I think you can really see a very savvy choice in terms of how they
Yeah.
start to get attention from this market by their big kind of coming out party. And where do you
Ooh.
think that happened?
And give me a year. What year was this?
Oh, 2014.
2014. Okay.
And I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
Their big sort of announcement was on TV. It was on a daytime television show.
The View?
Better. Dr. Phil.
Oh, God. Oh, geez.
So it was an absolutely fascinating announcement, and I want to show you a little bit of kind of how they worked it into the show. I'm not certain that the clip I'm going to share with you is the actual first time they appeared on the show, because they actually did it multiple times. But this gives you an example of kind of like how this is treated on the show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to you in our little chat, and then watch it. And then I want to hear you describe, after you've watched it, sort of like what you've seen.
Okay.
I'm going to give you one of my Chime cards that's worth $5,000.
I mean, genius.
Talk to us about kind of like describe to those at home what you see in terms of how they're including Chime in the show.
Well, one is Dr. Phil claimed that is a thing that he uses. It's his personal little secret weapon, and which he called a debit thing, I think is what he called it. He wasn't really clear on exactly what it was.
He didn't. I can't say that he landed the description.
He did not stick the landing
so hard at the top.
He did not stick the landing. Oh, I got this thing for myself that I use. It's a Chime card. It's a debit card a thing I use.
He got there though. He did.
There. He interjected it at a moment of deep emotional importance for this couple. She's having a baby. It looks like the husband was less than, or the father of the baby rather, I do want to presume, was less than thrilled.
He didn't look
he
that
looked terrified
about it. Yeah.
And they cut to a really weird like full screen Chime thing that was like a stock image, a Chime card, and then some sort of like floaty no overdraft fees thing, and that's basically all it said. But it felt organic, like, I have this thing that I want to share with you. So it was much more of like a endorsed recommendation as opposed to an advertisement.
Yeah. I mean, this thing worked very, very well for them in terms of getting Chime into the hearts and minds of, frankly, like we're talking daytime TV, right?
Yeah.
We're not even just talking like Gen Pop. Like this is going to be largely women. This is going to be, largely of a specific income bracket in terms of kind of like their audience.
Yeah.
So very savvy in terms of who they're presenting it to. And I totally agree. I thought it comes off as like, is he a natural salesman? Not really. Like he really kind of struggled to hit the claims and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he grounded Chime and kind of like, this is going to be a thing that's going to help you at this like specific juncture.
Yeah.
The amount on the Chime card, I thought was kind of interesting. At first I was like, Dr. Phil, you're only giving this woman $5,000 for her baby things. Like, come on. But I think it's kind of illustrative. Like it puts the Chime card as this thing that isn't only for delivering $500,000. Like instead it kind of like grounds Chime in this world that I think is more accessible. Certainly those $5,000 are going to go very long way in terms of like helping her buy a crib, buy a stroller, like all these things that as like a first time mom she's going to need to get. So like, we're talking about real tangible value in your everyday. And I loved that, like at the very end, he's kind of like, and then there's all these other benefits. Like I thought he went when I watched it, I was like, he's really going out of his way to make sure that we're landing Chime.
Yeah.
Which, you could say is just because they paid him. But actually,
We have intel.
Dr. Phil's son, Jay McGraw, is an investor in Chime,
Oh.
which is disclosed in the copy of that Facebook post that I even shared to
Oh, the thought plickens.
you. And he, not only is he like a big investor in Chime, he made $140 million when Chime IPO'd,
Jesus.
just from like the IPO alone. And this guy, so
Hold up. Are you
Dr.
saying
Phil's-
that Dr. Phil McGraw is ethically compromised? Is that what I'm hearing coming out of your mouth right now?
I don't have a ton to say about Dr. Phil other than like he did the thing that benefited his son.
Yeah.
So I don't know if his son was like, and Dad, I wanted to give you, a $50 million birthday present.
Right.
But what I can say is that Dr. Phil's son, Jay McGraw, is married to one of the Playboy Dom triplets.
Wait, who are the Dom triplets?
You don't remember the Dom triplets? Why am I a gay dude and I remember the Dom triplets?
Did they live with Hugh Hefner?
I think for a while they did. They were like part of the whole, like, you remember like mid-aughts when like Hugh Hefner was kind of big again and he was doing a bunch of stuff on MTV with all the dirtbags on MTV at the time, like the Jackass Crew and all that stuff. The Dom triplets were around in that time and they're what you expect from a Playboy bunny in the mid-aughts. Skinny, blonde, tan, kind of like, smiley.
Yeah.
So he married one of those. He picked himself up one. I'm not sure he cared which one, but I believe she's Erica. And then he also, most recently, Jay McGraw's name has been in the news because he is connected to what many describe as an almost ludicrously predatory tribal lending company that up in Alaska that has been hitting people with 700% plus interest rates for borrowing. So,
and targeting native peoples in Alaska.
Well, I think part of the controversy is it's like native owned as well. And so it's kind of dividing the tribe and tribal communities because he is probably, allegedly he is siphoning off most of the fees but it is for all in legal intents purposes owned by a tribal member, at least, if not a tribal body.
All right.
Regardless, it's also targeting tribal people and it's putting them crazy into debt, which is not a thing that Dr. Phil says you should do.
Yeah. And
he says, stay away from that debt.
And is he still a Chime investor, or when they IPO'd, he cashed out?
I don't know, but he certainly made bank on the IPO that happened after introducing it on the show. Mixed bag of kind of like a little bit like different things to take away from this introduction, but there's no question that it was a very effective way for them to enter the market.
Yeah. Topher, I appreciate your commitment to, I thought when we started this podcast, I was like, Topher seems like maybe he's genuinely sort of impressed by this brand. But, you can't take the skepticism out of the skeptic, and I appreciate that.
I mean, it's rich people making money. Yeah. So it's never going to smell great all the way through. But there's no question that there are, I truly think that if we look at kind of like their impact on the industry, there's no question that they have made a positive impact on things that, like, we're talking about predatory lending with this like tribal blah, blah, blah. But like, if you want to talk predatory lending, let's talk about overdraft fees and monthly fees for using a checking account. Those are things that you absolutely have to do, that you are like probably as an average person absolutely going to encounter. Mm-hmm. And we're talking like scales of like $40 billion a year that just the big banks are making off of average everyday Americans. So like Chime has absolutely shifted the Overton window on like what is reasonable and people will put up with in terms of those fees. So when Chime came out, and really started to take the battle to the big banks
Yeah.
in 2019, they were kind of on this like overdraft fees battle.
Yeah.
And so they were positioning themselves against those big banks. And so that really kind of like takes us a little bit back to the design and the method of launch being very intentional in terms of like bucking the category.
Yeah.
They really wanted to seem to Main Street or your average everyday American that they are kind of this like Silicon Valley or tech bank as a way to kind of help you think about them differently.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing a lot of commercials, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, where they were courting like entrepreneurs or, very early entrepreneurs, I've just started my online marketing business and
A soap company in my basement.
and like it was Chime was kind of like the sponsor for that, and curious if that was like a pivot for them. Did they there's so many different categories in finance, and so we started by talking about how they're not a bank, they're not a neobank, they're a
yeah.
Were they branching into things like investment, or have they stayed pretty pure in terms of their overall business model?
Yeah. We're skipping a little bit ahead because
crap.
I want to get to that.
Right.
But before we kind of go into like where they are now,
Yeah.
I want to go like just put a little bit of like a period to the sentence of kind of like them intentionally showing up in different ways.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of an informal review. Thank you, Claude, for helping power this study that I did. And I asked it to look at the 100 top financial apps, services, banks, brands currently over the past 5 years, pull 100 of them, and then run a pure sort of color scan against their identities and logos and sort and say what colors appear either in the logo or either in the system the most frequently. And so I have the top 5.
Okay.
And do you want to just find out what they are? Or do you want to guess?
Top 5 colors that appear in the
Financial brands.
The top 100 financial.
Yep.
I can guess.
Yeah.
I would say blue, red,
Okay.
green, purple, yellow.
And is that in the order that you think they are? Or just those are the top 5?
Maybe swapping purple and yellow.
Okay. So you think it's blue, then red, then green, then yellow, then purple.
Yeah.
You did an excellent, excellent job. Blue, definitely.
Yeah.
42%.
That tracks.
Everything else kind of splits the rest of that. So there's no clear winner after blue. It's blue owning almost half the category.
Yeah.
Then after that is green. Then after that is black gray.
Oh, yeah. Tracks.
Then red, then purple.
And purple, it's so strange because, like, purple I wouldn't have said until Ally became a brand.
Yep. Purple tends to be newer. It's popping up in like more recent stuff.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting, green was kind of like at like 18%, and then like I think black was at 15, and by the time we get to red, we're looking at 12 or something like that. So this kind of made me think, because then I was comparing in my head, kind of like, what does it mean to be a blue financial brand versus a green financial brand? And this is an unscientific, if asking Claude something is like only kind of scientific, then this next thing is like even less scientific.
Okay, cool.
But
Perfect.
it is more about like a like a creative exercise.
Yeah.
But I found myself being like, does maybe the difference between a blue financial brand and a green financial brand mean that a blue financial brand is about protecting the money you have?
Okay.
And a green financial brand is about trying to get more money.
Okay. Give me some backup for this thesis.
So once I kind of used this as kind of like the like rubric,
Mm-hmm.
then I started to even be able to get into places where I was like, TD Ameritrade is using green in a blue way.
It's blue coded. It's definitely.
Yeah, it's blue coated green because I started to think about things like Cash App, Chime,
Right.
Robinhood.
Yeah.
All of those were green, but they weren't like your like standard green.
Also,
right?
TD
Like
Ameritrade got absorbed into Charles Schwab, which is a blue brand. So
Oh,
you're
yeah,
correct.
okay. And so like all those brands, I think, are targeting people who want something new from the financial world.
Yeah.
And they are not the people who necessarily are in power. These are not your status quo people.
Mm-hmm.
These are younger people. These are lower income people. These are people who may not have access or who are underserved.
Yeah.
So they aren't necessarily interested in something that feels safe and comforting because the thing that was safe and comforting was safe and comforting to the people who had.
Yeah.
And they were not part of that. So they don't necessarily look at blue and think like, that's looking out for me and what I have. They're looking at blue and feeling like that's more of like a fence
Right.
than a gate, you know?
Which is probably intentional on the part of the brands that use blue. It's supposed to communicate solidity in some ways, like a bit of like, blue is always kind of connected to royal regality. So there's an echo of long past classism and things like that there. So
Yeah.
that tracks.
And I mean, like blue has like a comforting feel, especially if you're in a darker space. It just feels like, solid. It's not going anywhere.
I also think like if I can extend this a little bit more, like blue.
Yeah.
Like blue as a color for centuries was a signifier of great wealth, because to achieve a certain level, a certain color blue, you needed to get lapis lazuli, and it's an insanely difficult tint to acquire. And so using that was like showing off that you had means. So I think those kinds of echoes, like we discussed on the Ferrari episode last year, like there's so many echoes we are receiving through brands that are centuries old and that are kind of like passed along as this like little pieces of cultural genetic code through these experiences.
Yeah. I think a little bit too about our more modern, like there's that historical reference. And then I also think of kind of like 1900s through today in terms of blue, navy blue being kind of like the color of the military in a variety of these spaces. Like it does feel like kind of we took blue as something that we could indigo brings it into like a world where we can have it more often. So like there is a thing that like it's accessible while still not being like toned down. Like the blue doesn't ever, if you wear navy blue, you're not dressed up to the most, but you're definitely not tacky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's a way to always be looking nice.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, oh, you just look nice.
Yeah, look at
you. Yeah. Okay, so this like world of design that they're landing in, I'll lead with that as the way to take us into the next world that you're talking about, where they're competing for different types of financial action.
Yeah.
They have pivoted on design.
Oh, no.
And they introduced what you and I will immediately know as kind of like the design language for they had to grow up a little bit. They introduced a serif font.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is the blemish on the cheek of every brand that says you have entered adolescence and your way to adulthood. Yes.
Yeah. I like saw that, and it actually made me I was like, wait, when did they do that? And then I went back and went, what's going on when like before this that led them to believe that? Will you explain before I get into like what was actually going on? Will you explain what that means? Like, what does it mean when a brand that has a sans serif introduces a serif font? Give us like the basics of the design world there.
So it can go to one of two ways. One way is which is this case in which you have a brand that was kind of like a challenger brand that deliberately used sans serifs, which is, are associated with like certain types of executions and contexts that are blockier, more modern. And so, a serif is a typeface that has like a little bit of flourishes on parts of the letter forms, and it's connected to certain industries. We think of it as like most newspaper fonts have been serif fonts for the long
Times New Roman, very standard,
etc.
Yeah,
legal and governmental documentation has traditionally used serif fonts, like they were typewriter fonts. And so using a serif is like, well, we're going to be talking to a more serious professional audience now, so we need to have access to this serif that they recognize, because the lack of little flourishes on an F is going to make their brain melt. And it's not that there's anything, I think, coded in those things. It's just that association with the New York Times, the Financial Times of London, the Economist, these places where people see serifs as like the typeface that is used. They want to kind of borrow some of that heft, that gravitas. The other way you do it is like you have like a cool hip brand that is has like started wants to introduce a serif to like actually go against their kind of cool hip category, like to bring in some of that like craftiness, a little bit of that hand carvedness. Like if you think about serifs, they were derived from kind of original like letterpress letters. And
like script before that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was going on then? Why did they switch? I mean, I can imagine the reasons, but I'm excited.
So they ran into some issues during the COVID financial crisis. So like and the tough thing is that actually they showed up really well during that crisis in some important ways. So they did some really, really helpful work getting relief to people as quickly as possible. That was something the government was moving forward on and all that stuff. But that we all kind of experienced. They're like, okay, we're moving forward with giving everybody some money, and then getting that money was a long and laborious process, and people really needed it.
Yeah.
And Chime absolutely went to the mat and did everything that they could to get money into the hands of their customers as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So that they came out looking really great on that.
Yeah.
The challenge is that as that moved forward, and then as like their systems are processing through all this stuff, and then as tax time comes around, blah, 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 all these types of things, their systems are running audits for fraud and stuff like that. But all of this like financial chicanery had happened so quickly in terms of like the government giving people money and then getting money in everybody's pockets, etc. They ended up closing a lot of valid accounts because their systems that were largely digital and more like, tech forward sniffed fraud and then just kind of like shut them down.
Yeah.
The problem is that those were real people's accounts in a time when they needed them.
Yeah.
And then the additional problem is because of the layer of complexity that we were talking about with Chime, where they don't have that money.
Yeah.
Once they tell people that they're like, okay, we shut your account down, the people were like, I'm going to need my money because I'm a real person. And they were like, oh, okay, we'll get back to you on that. And they were supposed to get that money in 2 weeks. And some people waited up to like 9 months to get that money. And if you are a bank that is targeting working with people for whom they are much more likely to be living paycheck to paycheck, that is a significant problem.
No kidding. Yeah, seriously.
So it kind of hit them. It's like a perfect storm because it really hit them where they're weakest. And I don't 100% blame them for this because, like, obviously it's their fault, right? Like, they need to own the fact that they fucked up.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that like in a time when they tried to do their best by people and they were moving fast, like I think you would probably still say net that they did better than most banks during this time. That said, they did create a specific problem that was pretty bad, and it also really indicted the entire model of them being tech forward, of them being distributed, all that stuff. It kind of like threw all of that into relief and showed the negative sides of that.
Right. Interesting that a time that actually benefited so many people for being tech forward showed the frailty of that in the banking context.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's a micro, well, not really a micro, but it's in some ways a micro view of the macro lesson that we were learning around like the benefits and negatives of globalism of distributed, like supply chains and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, they needed to show that they were growing up and taking this shit seriously. They also wanted to move away from being the internet bank.
Right, totally.
Because they didn't necessarily want to underscore like, we're super tech focused. So in that context, I think it's a classic way to, a classic crisis that might need a little bit of a redesign that would go towards your to Serif or not to Serif situation that you just described.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny too that such an esoteric thing, the difference between a sans serif and a serif.
Totally. And it doesn't totally make sense. Like, I don't know.
But
sans serif always sounds
over and over
more
again.
Complicated to me. Totally, You know what I mean? So like, I'm always like, shouldn't that be the fancy one? It has French in it,
But like, it's always used. Yeah, it's like used repeatedly to signal exactly this. Like, we're serious. We've grown up. We're more trustworthy. And like, and it works. I mean, it works. People do notice the change and say, oh, well, okay, well, tip of the hat to you, like,
they look a little bit more established. They look a little bit more grown up.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. They've kept the green. So they're still in that world and they're in good company. Robinhood has changed the type of green they're using. So his Cash App, but like they're all still living in that space. But now, in a lot of ways, now we get into kind of what you were talking about. Like, I remember seeing Chime kind of showing up, talking about like, early tech founders and that type of stuff. They still have a strong sort of accessibility message in terms of like giving people access to banking, but they have expanded that. When I was digging through kind of research on the history of Chime and stuff like that, I saw one resource kind of talk about Chime is in the pre-COVID world of like 2019, really competing with banks on fees and really going super hard against them and stealing share from them. Now in 2026, they're competing with Cash App and with Venmo on liquidity. So liquidity is kind of like the new area where they're waging war. And so they're bringing with them the kind of new, more grown-up them that came out of COVID era. But these are kind of three players that are built on very different features that drew in tribes that had different, unique clusters of needs, and they have all grown from there. They're all deploying different solves in different ways to help people when we speak about liquidity, kind of like just like access cash. So it's more the big competitive space in terms of drawing people in, what types of features are attractive, are kind of like how quickly can you get your money and where are you getting that money from? So the way that Venmo does that is going to be a little different than the way that Cash App does that. It's going to be different from the way that Chime does that, but they're all kind of rolling out a lot of features. So when I, for example, just mentioned at the top of the show, like MyPay is their latest product, and that's basically getting like a $500 advance on your paycheck. There's no question that that is a better thing to do than go to a payday loan company.
Right, for sure.
What you're dealing with is like different points of kind of access. You know, Venmo in terms of kind of talking about like what are the, you know, ways in which money that somebody gives you for going out to eat can be something that you can access more quickly. You know, Cash App kind of talking about like what are ways in which you could, they've done a lot in like turning Bitcoin into cash really quickly. But they also have some stuff that from the outside kind of looks a little similar to Venmo in terms of like some peer-to-peer stuff. And how does that peer-to-peer stuff hit your bank really, really quickly? And how do you realize that as instant money, even though it's really kind of like the money's chugging its way through the system in the background?
Are you a Cash App person? I feel like I've never used Cash App.
I don't. I Venmo,
Same.
which firmly places me in the millennial category. So I was digging through kind of user base demos to kind of see where these three sat in terms of like what markets they're bringing to bear right now. And it's interesting that like Chime actually sits in the middle of Venmo and Cash App. So Cash App being the youngest, Venmo being the oldest, and Chime sitting in the middle. Venmo also has way more users than either of the other two of them. But it is kind of standing to lose share to each of those as those other ones kind of like start to innovate new things. Venmo is kind of like a little bit more stuck in kind of this just like paying for pizza that you split with a friend. And Chime is in a really enviable place because they have a much higher hurdle to get people to surmount, which is like, give us you should send your direct deposit to us.
Send your paycheck to us.
That's a much harder conversation to say than like sign up here and it's an easy way to give your buddy $15. But once they have you, they really have you, like me, and you're transacting so much more with them that like I can imagine that they're just able to make so much more money per person that is working with them. So, you know, I think you can really watch this obviously at the feature level. Like we're talking about like what types of tools get introduced into each one of these platforms and how are they going to use that to compete for space. But the thing that I would kind of leave this episode with in terms of like us talking about this and like telling our viewers this, viewers and listeners is, you know, there's another way to track how these three are competing for share as they move forward. And that is how they show up. What color are they? Are they using serifs? What media are they? Are they on Dr. Phil? Are they, you know, working with influencers and finfluencers? Are they on TikTok? So we've been talking a lot about features and tracking, you know, like how each one of these different platforms is rolling out different products and services for people. And certainly that's a way to kind of track how they're competing, how they're going to try and win to grab more share of wallet, to be able to kind of like be the platform that people are really transacting on. But I would say based on everything that we've learned in this episode, I would say there's a challenge for us as well as for our listeners and viewers that you could track this competition not on features that are released, but you could literally see how it's going and how each is going to market by looking at the colors that they show up in, by looking at the fonts that they use, serif versus sans serif, by looking at the media channels and the creators and programs that they are attaching themselves to. Those could all be ways that you could sort of look at their approaches, their strategies, and how they are trying to appeal to people who've got money.
Okay, so Venmo is blue. It is, you know, that still has a very sans serif-y kind of vibe to it. Very like Web 2.0. You know, like. Do you think that's
it's something that like came out? It's got like an early millennial vibe.
It's
you know,
such
like
an
it's
early
like
millennial vibe.
I feel like it sits right next to I imagine it being next to the Foursquare app on my phone.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just want to point out, Topher, that in this world of blue versus green, we have clearly taken sides, you and I.
Oh, yeah. Look
Which
at
I
me,
think was
institutional.
Yeah, look at him.
Yeah.
his with his fancy tie and his blue paint.
Yeah.
What kind of jacket's that? It's like a
Like a chore coat.
yeah, chore coat.
Kind of like
Yeah.
an indigo chore coat.
Nothing says established.
Yeah. I'm about keeping what I got.
Yeah, exactly.
Like yeah. And you're out here on the make.
Yeah,
You're
look at me.
moving fast.
I'm growing monies. I'm making
mint
liquidity
green.
happen.
Mint green shirt says I'm taking chances.
What so what is your prediction? Who do you think is going to move in what direction?
Well, I mean, from the perspective of Venmo, they have everything to lose. They have, in some cases, like I believe 5 times the amount of users that Chime does. Now, how Chime and Venmo compare? Is it an apples to apples thing? Like, how many do people use them? You know, like it's a different thing. Like, it's easier for people to use Venmo than Chime, et cetera. That said, I think Chime and Cash App are looking to pick apart Venmo. Yeah. Like I could see them wanting to basically try and split the Venmo world.
Right.
But like, you know, if you're an incumbent that has like 100 million users like Venmo is, then like, can you kind of just be like, all right, I'm going to just chill, or 10 million users, I think 100 million is wild. 10 million users. Can you just be like, I'm going to chill with these people? Like, you know, most millennials are not going to switch to Cash App to repay each other for brunch, you know? Like, totally. I think that's just, you can probably hang with that. So like, I think Venmo switching to changing themselves to be green and like, you know, doing the like super internet-y, you know, types of marketing and like, that's it. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think it'll be interesting to see how grown up and institutional Chime and Cash App want to be in order to win in that space.
Well, this is purely anecdotal, and so take it with a grain of salt. But there is, from my perspective, Venmo does have some sort of like a little bit of built-in resiliency because, you know, as you know, sometimes I spend part of my time upstate, and if you go to random farm stand along nearly abandoned country road and you just want to get a carton of eggs, Betty will have her Venmo printed out and posted on the wall inside of that little farm stand. And so she said, I can understand this. This is technology I can, and that's a pretty heavy lift in some parts of the country. So like, my plow guy, you know, like takes Venmo, which, I think it's just a bit of a firewall, you know, like those folks are probably not going, they're not really eager to switch between platforms. That's not what they're about. So like,
yes, I don't think that's a moat for forever because that exact same thing can be said for Cash App with like your local barber. Totally. He'll take Cash App. It kind of depends on the age of the people transacting.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's like Venmo is like the Facebook of, you know, cash financial apps.
Also blue. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. There's a whole side world of like when I have this entire treatise, which we can get into a different thing of when different social platforms went to which colors, because there were multiple waves of it. Yeah. There was like a blue wave, there was a purple wave, there was a black wave. All of those were associated with different things, like legal pressures, et cetera. So like I have a whole nother thing that we can get to.
I love this. We should do a side quest because I think this is so interesting.
Yeah,
we'll do a side quest. Okay. Explore this. All right. Well, listen, like that. I appreciate you. Yeah. Yes. Go.
Yeah, I have before we wrap completely up, but I don't want to cut you. I don't want to cut your accolades off.
No,
but I wanted to toss you a little something before we wrapped the whole thing up.
Sure.
Which is the other thing that was in my brain while we were doing this is something that you mentioned a little bit, which is like, so like, do you think that like Chime is a good company? And, you know, it's fun to pick apart Dr. Phil's, you know, Biden's son type vibe that he's got going on there with that weird shit. But that stuff aside, like there are obvious reasons in my head to say that like Chime has had indisputably a good impact in some ways on the industry. Yeah. they are also transacting within an industry that is still highly regulated, and obviously they are making an enormous amount of money, and so they're not a charity. The question in my the question is obviously like, well, what constitutes a good company? And it made me think about our Webby-winning work that we recently did for a company called Centivo that we were very, very proud of. And I wondered if some of that might have been in your head when you brought up Chime, because I saw a lot of corollaries between Chime and Centivo being entering into a system and then trying to make that system work better.
But also not being technically of that system. So for instance, Centivo is not a health insurance company.
That's
the
a great
way
point.
that Chime is not a bank. They both show up and provide the same type of access that those underlying entities provide, but they are not that thing. And I hadn't thought about that, but now as soon as you started to describe the way in which Chime sits on top of banks, I immediately thought of Centivo. And I thought of the idea, like, Centivo has made a very deliberate agenda of disrupting not only sort of like the back end of how, the sort of technological infrastructure for how you deliver access to healthcare, but also like some of the tropes of the category, some of the things that the public knows and dislikes about them. And it sounds like Chime has a very similar approach as well. Like its mission is connected to its belief system, is connected to its operating model.
Yeah. And it even made me think about how Chime came into a blue banking space and decided to be green.
Yeah.
And Centivo came ostensibly into a black and white and sometimes green health insurance space and decided to be orange.
Yeah.
And like, I think that kind of like communication of outsiderness, of thinking differently, it even made me think of that component of it.
And does it also make you think, like it did me, that we've reached a point in which the adage about sort of changing something from the inside is really just kind of no longer valid? Do you know, like they didn't set up a health insurance company or a bank that was just going to be better. They were like, well, what if we just kind of...
What if we accomplished the same objectives in a
something
different way?
Yeah, just showed up. It was just became a different thing. And are we at a place where like... We're what is in the Hegelian dialectic? Are we in the sort of like synthesis? What is it? It's conflict, resolution, then synthesis. Is that where we're at now? Like we've moved on to the new thing, the next thing.
Yeah, and I think maybe in a world that feels more status quo, giving your money to something that isn't a bank is like, I don't need to take that chance.
Yeah.
Or like signing up to receive health coverage from something that isn't like a quote unquote health insurance. You're like, but as things become more disrupted, are you more like, well, the name isn't nearly as important as like, is this just a better way for me to receive health coverage?
Right.
Is this just a better way for me to receive financial viability?
Right.
And so the names matter less than kind of the outputs. And Centivo and Chime are both able to kind of like just deliver better outputs, remove a lot of friction, solve some basic problems.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that gets us to the end of my thinking. We hit on our little bonus thing.
I know. Well, we end with Hegel, so, pretty great.
Yeah. And now, speaking of high-minded philosophy, I need to deliver to you your brand.
Right.
That you're going to be pursuing.
Okay.
And maybe Hegel will be helpful in this space.
Okay.
But at the very least, it will provide some interesting assonance and some interesting wordplay, because Hegel is going to have to help you with Huggies.
Huggies. Interesting. That's fun. We've never really done anything like a Huggies, have we?
I know. No.
Yeah, no,
we haven't like kind of played in that world. I don't know a lot about the diaper world myself.
Me neither.
I don't know if, you
Yeah.
know, I wasn't going to, I don't, what you do in your private time is up to you.
Right. I have a vague, and tell me if this is an experience that you've ever had in your life. I feel that repeatedly throughout my life, I've been compelled to choose sides between brands in a certain category. So for instance, peanut butter.
Yeah.
Jif. I was definitely a Jif person. People were Skippy people. And then there was like Peter Pan people. Like,
sure.
Who are those folks?
Yeah.
So like Jif versus Skippy, like, and you know, I'm sure there's other examples, but for some reason I have a memory in my brain, and I don't know if this is because my parents were this way, of being a Pampers versus a Huggies person. It's like the Bubble Yum versus Bubblicious, right? Like those were two
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe we were like a Pampers
You're
house.
a Pampers family.
Yeah, we might have been a Pampers family. So
I don't even remember. I might, like, give me, if I need to do homework for this, let me know. I do not recall. We probably were one of those too. So I don't remember which it was.
I think at some point we were cloth diapers. Like, not that because I remember there being
nice.
I remember being old enough to have come across this thing and been like, what the heck is this? And mom's like, it's a cloth diaper. And I'm like, were we Victorians?
Yeah.
Like,
right. I mean, it's big. It's big now.
Yeah. I mean, it seems so comfortable. I mean, again, whatever one does in the privacy of their own house, but like a cloth diaper seems like a nice little situation.
If you're a baby, better than wearing like a, trash bag.
I mean, even now
But
on a
who
day
knows?
like, it's 93 out in New York today. I'm wearing shorts right now. Like, why can't I just be rocking around in a cloth diaper? That seems kind of nice.
Right.
Little padding.
Okay. So this episode might become a sartorial exploration that could free you
Yeah.
from being able to appear in public.
Yeah. This is the clip that's going to go viral. Robert just saying, why can't I just rock a cloth diaper? That's going to be great.
Mash up to like the indictment that
yeah, exactly.
the court case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is awesome. Huggies. I love it. I feel like, you've given me a couple brands that have allowed me to access more tender moments and emotions, like Crayola, Huggies, and I appreciate that. I think what you're telling me is that like I need a little bit of sweetness and softness in my life. Is that what you're saying
Goo
too?
gaga. Yeah.
Goo gaga. All right, perfect. Well, that was absolutely amazing. And next time we'll be talking about and possibly wearing Huggies.
I love it. Never say never.
So for that, join us next time. You've been listening to Strange Coordinates. This is the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at surprising places. Your hosts are Topher Burns and me, Robert Baylog. If you want to learn more about our agency, more about our award-winning work, please go to our website, which is weareterritorial.com. There you can join our mailing list. You can watch some fun videos. We actually just posted another case study of some work we did with a different client, Zesty Paws, who is a pet supplement brand. So if you like images and videos of very adorable pets, that's your link to click.
Yes.
So go there, and then also follow us on LinkedIn. We post a lot of cool things there, and you'll never get tired of the kind of fun little tidbits that we put up on the socials. So really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time, y'all.
Bye, everybody.